Welcome to Shardcast, the Brandon Sanderson podcast. We're a bunch of mega fans giving you the news, discussion, and of course, a whole lot of opinions about Brandon's work and the Cosmere. I'm Eric, and I'm actually editing this intro after recording because last week we had a podcast on Odium that we had to split due to length. We don't quite get the usual intro. If you want to listen to the previous episode on introducing Odium, there will be a link below. Enjoy. All right, guys. Are you ready for the main... So we talked a lot about Odium, but the main event that you guys wanted to hear about is talking about what is the force that many people call Odium.
Welcome to Shardcast Civil War Edition.
Shardcast Civil War Edition. Ian's team versus my team.
Hey, Eric, is this a subject you're passionate about?
Oh no, I hate it.
Civil War, yes. Who's Tony Stark? Who's Captain America in this?
I need to be.
Which
Tony.
one are you,
That's-
Ian?
I'm going to go with Captain America because he was the one that's in the right.
I'd probably be Tony
Obviously.
Stark, who's awesome. So great, cool, great. That's fine. I'm not good enough to be Captain America. That's fine. You can have him. All right. Okay. So what are we talking about here, guys? So again, as we mentioned before, the word intent has been used to describe the name of a shard, the force, that thing that it is. That is not a canonical term, so don't capitalize it. Although Brandon does use it now, but in years ago, he was very confused that we used that word, actually.
Yeah, we've used it enough that now he understands what we mean by a shard's intent.
Right, yes. And so
don't change it. Please, don't change it.
Until we have a term that is, the canonical term, like vessel, for what we called a shard holder. It's like, yes, you just use vessel, right? When we all should. But there's a lot of question as to what Odium is and whether he is Odium or is he passion? And how much does a vessel filter what the shard is? All of these questions. And so
I have a point I would like to start on.
Okay, great.
Which is, personally, I feel that boiling down a shard's intent to a single word is a futile exercise.
Completely agree.
Sure.
Completely agree. Like,
easy to agree on this one.
Yes.
So, in a sense, this entire conversation could be pointless because they could both adequately describe that which Odium is. The entity referred to as Odium.
Well, that part I disagree about. That last part that you said that they both could refer to that. That I don't agree with. But could this discussion be pointless? Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
So
that part I agree with.
I actually have 2 quotes I want to read from Secret History.
Great. Please do.
Okay. So, in Secret History, Kelsier meets Ruin and Preservation.
Oh, these are great.
Yes. And Kelsier has these really poetic descriptions of what these shards are. So first up is Ruin. This force was time infinite. It was the winds that weathered, the storms that broke, the timeless waves running slowly, slowly, slowly to a stop as the sun and the planet cooled to nothing. It was the ultimate end and destiny of all things.
That's so cool. Oh,
Yes.
I'm so pumped. Shards are so awesome.
Yes.
This is why I
And
love the
then
Cosmere.
Preservation. It was the infinity of a note held perfectly, never wavering. The majesty of a painting, frozen and still, capturing a slice of life from a time gone by. It was the power of many, many moments compressed somehow into one.
That's cool. Not as cool as Ruin, but, it's pretty cool, I guess.
I like this one.
It is very poetic.
Yes.
It is very poetic.
As we pointed out we were discussing before the episode, Eric is ruin, I am preservation.
That's true.
Yes.
That is true. Yes. Mm-hmm.
So, and
Civil
basically, this goes to show the shards are more than just ruin and just preservation. Like,
Yes.
that's boiling it down to a point that, like, yes, like, that accurately describes them, but doesn't necessarily accurately describe all that they are.
Yes.
And
There's infinities. You can't describe them with a word.
and it doesn't necessarily mean that another vessel picking up the shard would be accurately described in the same way.
So, what I was going to say, that, like, yes, Odium describes the entity referred to as Odium. And so, like,
Raise.
I'm not discounting that. Like, Odium is an apt term for Race's shard. But it doesn't necessarily describe all that the shard is.
That last statement, I completely agree.
Sure.
So we need to do some other readings. Evgeni, why don't you scroll up to the top and read what I'm highlighting here?
Welcome to Shardcast. No.
No. Or that part's being cut.
So this excerpt comes from one of the one of the interactions between Dalinar and Odium. The first one, I believe, where Odium speaks and says, "They call me Odium," the old man said. "A good enough name. It does have a certain bite to it, but the word is too limiting to describe me, and you should know that it is not all I represent." "Which is?" asks Dalinar. He looked to Dalinar. "Passion, Dalinar Kulin. I am emotion incarnate. I am the soul of the spren and of men. I am lust, joy, hatred, anger, and exaltation. I am glory and I am vice. I am the very thing that makes men men. Honor cared only for bonds, not the meaning of bonds and oaths, merely that they were kept. Cultivation only wants to see transformation, growth. It can be good or bad for all she cares. The pain of men is nothing to her. Only I understand it. Only I care, Dalinar."
A little bit further down, where Dalinar says, "Oh," Dalinar thinks that he's seen Odium, and Odium says, "You've seen me, have you?" Curious. Odium smiled again. Then everything went white. Dalinar found himself standing on a speck of nothingness that was the entire world, looking up at an eternal, all-embracing flame. It stretched in every direction, starting as red, moving to orange, then changing to a blazing white. Then, somehow, the flame seemed to burn into a deep blackness, violet and angry. There was something so terrible that it consumed light itself. It was hot, a radiance indescribable, intense heat and black fire, colored violet at the outside, burning, overwhelming power. It was the scream of 1,000 warriors on the battlefield. It was the moment of most sensual touch and ecstasy. It was the sorrow of loss, the joy of victory, and it was hatred, deep, pulsing hatred with a pressure to turn all things molten. It was the heat of 1,000 suns. It was the bliss of every kiss. It was the lives of all men wrapped in one, defined by everything they felt. Even taking in the smallest fraction of it terrified Dalinar. It left him tiny and frail. He knew if he drank of that raw, concentrated, liquid black fire, he'd be nothing in a moment. The entire planet of Roshar would puff away, no more consequential than the curling smoke of a snuffed-out candle.
And that brings our descriptions of shards up to 3.
Yes.
And that is Odium. That is exactly what that force is.
Yes. Which
And that is why I
it's
think he's
more
more
than
passionate.
hatred.
I agree.
Yes.
And yes. I like the line, it was the lives of all men wrapped in one, defined by everything they felt. That's very,
It harkens back to one of the things Kelsier was experiencing.
Yeah, that preservation line that Ian read.
Yeah.
It was just like that, you know?
Yeah.
Like all moments
Compressed in one.
Yeah, it was just like that, actually.
Because it's an eternity.
Yeah.
All the shards are eternity.
So, and I think this next one is from Jordan Con, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Questioner. In universe, all the intents and shards and names, who names them? Do they name themselves? Brayden. I have kind of imagined this is one of those things that they certainly have influence over. But obviously, Odium thinks that he's named something other than what he is, and I feel like these are intrinsic things that the 16 all knew. Like, I am missing this part of me. It is this. And it was less we went around the names, more like this is just what it is. And various shards are resisting that. But the others are all like, this is what you represent. And then Billy asked, follow-up question here. Would the entity that we call Odium refer to itself as Odium when it's honest with itself? And then Brandon said, I don't think Odium is capable of being honest with himself. There are times where Odium has called himself Odium. This is more out of convenience and the fact that everyone calls you by a name. But Odium is determined to change that perception. And then Billy goes, so does he genuinely believe in characterizing himself as passion? Brandon, yes, part of him does. Billy, has he always ever been Odium since the shattering? Brandon, yes.
And that's really cool, because actually, if you read when Odium first meets Dalinar, Odium says, they call me Odium.
Yeah.
So that it's totally in that same sort of vein.
Though I don't like how Brandon phrases some of this.
How so?
Because he's like, each of the shards can tell, like, the missing piece that, like, this other shard is. Where, like,
Yeah.
logically that doesn't make sense. Like, because if you only have one piece of the puzzle, you don't know how every single other piece fits together.
Well, I mean, if you're a shard,
You can extend your mind out and maybe, like, figure that out. Like,
Yeah.
you can
But
do
like, that would be
weird-
an external observation of, like,
Yeah.
what are these other shards? It's
Sure.
not like you intrinsically
Sure.
know what's missing. Because,
Well-
like, yeah, you're missing a whole lot. Like, you're 1/16th of something.
Here's the thing, though. Because each one of them is a shard of Adonalsium,
Mhm.
maybe just when you are at this power scale, or when you are holding a shard of a practical divinity, there is information encoded in there that tells you, well, here is what a complete picture of Adonalsium would look like, and you are this piece. And here's all the other stuff that you're missing. I agree that it's weird and I don't like it, but I can imagine a situation where it makes sense.
It's. I just don't think a single shard should intrinsically understand how the rest of Adonalsium divvied up. Like, they intrinsically understand themselves. But
yeah, sure, yeah. And then there's various quotes about shards' intents and them being filtered. And one of them is from last year's Salt Lake Comic-Con, where a questioner asks, I was just wondering if a shard's intent can change over time without changing holders. Brandon, without changing holders, the holder can have a slight effect on how a big effect on how the intent is interpreted, but what the intent is stays the same. So it's going to be filtered. The way it manifests can change, and you'll see that happening, but it is the same intent. When it was broken off, it took a certain thing with it.
that's actually the one I wanted to find that I couldn't find. So thank you for
Great.
that.
You bet. Got you covered.
Like that's what when I was talking about a vessel can have a huge effect on a shard. That was the thing I was thinking of.
Yeah, but interpreted. Key word there. Very important. Very important.
Okay.
And it's totally there. I agree
Okay.
with what Brandon says. And there was another one that I got long ago in 2011
Mhm.
that described a person and the shard as being this massive contest of wills that over time the shard always wins. And your mind does not leave a permanent effect on the shard, but the vessel's personality does get to filter the shard's intent.
Mhm.
But if the vessel no longer held that shard, the shard would not continue to be filtered by that person and what they
Yeah.
thought.
And because you're saying the the shard always wins.
Yes.
I don't think that means that, like, eventually, like, all vessels are indistinguishable from each other.
Yeah, okay, that's fine.
Okay,
yeah.
because sometimes I feel like that's what you're
No,
point you're
no,
trying to make is
no.
okay.
No.
Because, like, the vessel is always there. The vessel is always going to have an effect on how the intent is expressed.
I think over time, the differences will be less slight, but it's probably more like, kind of like what we were saying with honor, like you're going along this path and making these choices, and you're kind of stuck in this rut that you've made, right? That you've dug this path for yourself, and you can't move further. You can't get out of that rut. You just keep digging a bigger rut.
Okay,
Yeah.
but, like, so the point I was trying to make is that
Yeah.
I think that ties more into the fact that, like, you can't act counter to your intent. Like, preservation found it very difficult to cause harm.
Not
True.
Yeah.
easily.
Not easily. Like,
Yes.
because, like, the shard can always be overcome with enough willpower,
Yes.
but, like, over time, that gets more and more and more difficult.
Yes.
So I think
And-
that's more that, like, the shard always wins. Because
Yeah.
in the end, like, the vessel is so infused with the investiture of that shard that, like,
Yeah.
it's not that they can't do it, it's like they never would.
Yeah,
'Cause-
right. Yes. And the only time, well, I mean, preservation did make the whole plan to kill Ruin when, like,
But that
yo,
was
I gotta
still
have someone else.
early on.
Yeah, right. But we did see one time where preservation acted counter to its intent in the Mist Spirit and stabbing Elend, right?
Well, no. That
was
was
Kelsier.
Kelsier. Kelsier grabbed Laris's arm and stabbed Elend.
Yep.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
Because-
that's right.
Fuzz
'Cause
was
preservation
freaking
wouldn't do
out.
it.
Like,
That's right.
Like,
That's right.
this
That's
is
right.
what I'm supposed to do, but, like, he couldn't
I can't
do it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mhm.
That's right.
And then
So-
has a panic attack afterwards because it's like,
Yeah,
what have
that's
I
right,
done?
That's right.
There is a slightly different side of this I would like to present,
Mhm.
and that's with Ruin in particular.
yes.
So what I think is, give it enough time, I think all vessels of the Shard of Ruin would end up in the same place, or a
Mm.
virtually indistinguishable place,
Mhm.
because in Secret History, when Kelsier experiences Ruin in one of the times he does,
Mhm.
he talks about seeing or imagining essentially a puppet, a human body, 80s body, that's essentially a puppet for the Shard of Ruin. And he does describe, like, tentacles and like void strings that the shard itself is using to manipulate 80. So I think over time the vessel is completely erased, or damn near completely erased.
What you just said, Evgeni, reminds me of the Hero of Ages annotation, which made me use the word intent, which says this: Ruin's consciousness, separate from his power, isn't a particularly nice being. But you can't much blame him, as there's very little that is left of the mind that once was. The force of Ruin has pretty well molded the mind to fit with the force's intent. That's why I use the word intent, guys. But that is that same sort of thing. Like, the mind is almost being destroyed in that sense. That's kind of what that's kind of is implying, in some sense.
It's being, like, remade.
Yeah.
Like, it's infused with the power of Ruin. It's like, and holding any amount of investiture has an effect on you.
Yeah. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, like, the mind that once was 80 before picking up Ruin. And that's not there anymore, really. Because it's so molded to be ruinous. And Evgeni, what you're saying is that eventually all shards would go, basically, to anyone who picked up that would get eventually there.
Yes. And there would be either no or virtually no room for vessel interpretation in this. So even if, and I'm just going to go on a complete tangent to humor some people, there is a theory or theory-like construct that says that Unity might be another interpretation for the Shard of Honor.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so, if that were the case, in this hypothetical world, then I believe that given enough time, the way the Shard of Honor is expressed through Tanavast, and the way the Shard of Honor would be expressed through a vessel of Unity, would end up being the same, even if at the beginning, one of them is very oaths, bonds, honor type of thing, and the other one is very unification type of thing.
We do have a word of Brandon.
So Sadeas Sadeas would express honor differently than Tanavast, and then Brandon said yes, he would. And then there's some before that. So the vessels.
Okay.
So the vessel's mind and how they perceive is going to have a large influence on how things are expressed. And I think all of them have some wiggle room. But there are some deterministic things that are also going to push them. You know, holding Ruin, Harmony may not go down the same path that happened to 80.
Okay.
So that pretty much directly goes against what Argent or Evgeni said.
Mm-hmm. But
Harmony doesn't hold only Ruin.
Well, even with Ruin, yes.
So that I think it's very natural that like everyone would turn out like Ruin did, because Ruin is the shard of entropy.
Yes.
Like that's a very like universe-wide, like things tend towards disorder. Things are going to be broken up. Like, yes, every shard is going to turn out like that because that's what the shard is.
Because there's less room for interpreting Ruin, basically?
To a certain extent, yeah.
I don't know if I agree with that.
Oh.
I think attributing entropy, which is a very universal concept, to the Shard of Ruin is accurate, because that's one of the things that Ruin does represent, but it also implies a certain level of objectivity to the Shard, and I don't know if we are ready to start assigning that to others.
Well, sure, but
Yeah.
yes, but I can kind of get behind Ian's point there.
Because like if we go back to the secret history thing, it's like the wave slowly crashing until the sun and the planet cool into nothing. That's a very entropy thing.
Very entropy. Like that's really very strongly tied to what that force is.
Sure, but it makes Ruin a very special shard. And I don't like the idea of having some shards more special than others.
I don't think it really makes it that special.
Because, like,
well, if you latch on to this interpretation, then Dalinar's experience with Odium, which is very human or man or mortal driven, doesn't work the same way. It doesn't have the same impact. Because you are
necessarily.
now
What do you
framing one of those shards as a universal thing, entropy, and the other one as a very subjective.
Well, shards
Emotions.
are forces attached to personalities, and some lean more towards there's the force aspect and there's a more human aspect, and some lean more towards one than the other. So I imagine Ruin leans more towards the force aspect, whereas Odium would lean more towards the human side. Like, it's a spectrum. It's not like
It's more just that different shards are different. They're not all like Ruin and Preservation. Ruin's that, but Preservation is a particular thing. But those aren't particularly related to humans or emotion or more ephemeral things. Like, keeping bonds is more ephemeral than Ruin and Preservation is, and that's okay.
Mhm.
Right? That's totally fine.
Yeah.
I don't see that being a problem. And autonomy's gonna be super weird. What that means, eventually we're gonna get a poetic description like that, but it's going to be more complex than Ruin and Preservation, because Ruin and Preservation are so polarized, and I don't think that's a problem.
And I think Ruin and Preservation are the most inhuman shards. Because they are.
Well, that would be hard to say unless we have all of them. But the ones we know. Yeah.
My guess would be they're the most aspects of the natural world rather than aspects of human personality almost.
Yeah,
'Cause they're
ambition.
They're change and not change. They are diametrically opposed, but they're very base reality fundamental thing.
Right. It's more like a physicsy thing, whereas ambition not related to physics at all.
Mhm.
That's just how it is. It's fine. A lot of them are related to these human-like things.
Yeah.
Because well, that's how it is.
It is how it is. It doesn't mean I need to like it.
They're aspects of God, basically. Right? Going back to the very first thing. Well, not the very first thing, but he bears the weight of God's own divine hatred, separated from the virtues that gave it context. These are aspects of God, right? That's what it's getting at. And is there ambition there? Yeah. Is there destruction there? Yeah. Is there preservation? Yeah. Is there growth and cultivation? Yeah. Is there hatred? Yeah.
Is there passion? Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think in that context, I think this is the context that makes me less comfortable with making the vessels of Ruin and Preservation more inevitably end up in the same boat, in the same shape after a given amount of time than the others.
Sure.
saying that one vessel for odium or passion would end up in a significantly different place than another would have to mean that the same would be true for Ruin and Preservation, for example.
Well, so I think I might have, because Odium, Eric, not Odium.
Close enough.
Odium is not on this
sure.
podcast.
All right, that's fine. Hi, how's it going?
Because
I'm
you
God.
asked the question
Welcome.
whether I thought that they would all end up in the same place because there's not enough wiggle room, and I don't know if I necessarily agree with that, thinking about it more. It's I think they would all end up at the same place. They wouldn't end up at they would end up in different places, but they would all be related in that they're out for destruction.
Yeah.
Because that's what the shard is. But they might have different methods on how they go about the destruction,
you might have
the purpose of that destruction.
Yeah, you might have something that views it as a natural entropy, and then you might have someone else who views it as willful destruction because it's fun, sort of thing. Like the kid who knocks down a Lego tower.
That's true. That is actually true, because Ati definitely was more of this is a natural sort of thing, and it wasn't I never felt that there was malice in what he was doing ever. There was no malice. It was just,
All
is how
things
it
must come
be.
to an end.
And
But
ruin
that
is definitely an aspect of human nature because humans like destroying things. It's fun.
yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like if in a sense they are human as well. Yeah, because there's not malice in what Ruin did, which probably goes back to Ati not wanting to destroy things. Like he was kind of generous in some sense, and like this could be the inevitable sort of thing where it's like he doesn't like it, but it's the natural way that it has to go, and I'm doing that. So yeah, that's what we're doing. Kind of way. And like someone who holds Odium, there's always going to be that pulsing hatred within it.
Yes.
Sure.
But could someone else hold Odium and not murder other shards? Absolutely, right? Like that's like a personality thing, right? Of what race's goals are, and it's being suffused with Odium, and they just happen to match pretty well. So it's working out pretty great for him in some sense.
Like, Odium has embraced the hatred. Like, he's like, this is all I am, but like, I like this hatred.
Yeah.
He doesn't mind it, but he does feel he's more than that. But there have been people on Discord who say, if another person picks up Odium, they would call themselves Passion or something. And I think the quotes that we read, Odium's the guy who thinks he's Passion. That's already the one we have. And it's still Odium, right?
Yeah.
Odium thinks he's Passion. He's just bad at being introspective, right?
As
part I would not say that. Like, he has been called Passion. He has been called Odium.
Yes.
Like, Odium is a fundamentally flawed term because it is a mortal word trying to describe an aspect of divinity.
That I agree with. Yes.
Okay. So it's like, yeah, sure. Like the shards call him Odium. Like, yes, like it accurately describes him. That doesn't mean Passion doesn't also accurately describe him. Because he is more than just hatred.
Sure.
Right. He picks up the shard. All the other 15 or some of them go, hey, you were Odium. And he goes, thanks, guys. That's not how I think of myself, but okay, I will now proceed to stab every single one of you.
Yeah. And it's... Do I think that, like, Odium accurately describes race as Odium? Yes. Like, absolutely. I don't think we should start calling Odium Passion by any means.
Yes.
But if someone else took up that power and shaped the intent, filtered the intent, like, they could potentially focus less on the hatred and more on all of Passion.
See, and
or rather one of the other emotions that
see, and this I think is
he talks about
is really comes down to the question is the filtering like this sort of willing voluntary process, or is it just it's filtered through their personality and they can try, but like their personality's their personality.
I think it's their personality. I think it's passive.
Yeah. Like,
I think
it's a question
too.
of is the filtering active or passive, and I think it's passive.
Passive.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And it's like,
I agree.
How does this person, this human person, not necessarily, mortal personality understand like this nebulous, like divine concept? How, like, if I took up preservation, it's like how do I understand preservation? Like, that would flavor how I would act, like how it would be expressed.
Yeah, how would you act? So, yeah.
Here's an interesting question that I think we're not going to be able to come up with an answer, but if we could, I think may give us a more definitive answer. We can all agree that there are there are multiple emotions that go into the shard that calls itself Odium.
Yes.
Calls itself Passion.
That's the point. He does not call himself Odium.
Fair.
Yeah.
Unless
the shard
it
we
serves.
call Odium. Yeah. The shard we call Odium.
God, so pedantic. Jesus.
Look, sometimes the pedanticness really matters with shards.
And sometimes
Is-
it's a man called Tall. Which,
Well, okay, that's this.
You're. Is hatred in any way a more valid or more powerful or more important than any of these other emotions that Reyes talks about, such as joy, lust, anger, exultation?
Yeah, like, and adding to your question, it doesn't seem like Odium's all emotion. These are like pretty specific things.
like, they're the passions.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, they're the yeah, right.
Sure, they're not
It is-
just any emotions, they are
Yeah.
very
Well-
driving emotions.
Yeah, but like Odium says, I'm emotion incarnate. I'm all of those. That's not accurate,
No.
right?
No.
Like, obviously not, right? Is hatred more overriding than any of the other ones? See, I think, here's the thing. There's that deep pulsing hatred in this force that will shape all of these other things. And yes, are there these other emotions in hatred? Like, I think yes. Like
well,
you can...
okay.
eh.
So
There are
personally,
different ways to read that. Like,
Yeah.
you're talking about the bit where it says, it was the scream of 1,000 warriors in the battlefield. It was the moment of most sensual touch and ecstasy. It was the sorrow of loss,
Yep.
the joy of it,
Yep.
and
Yep.
it
And-
was hate. Like,
Yep.
one way to read that is to say, yes, it was all of these things, but it was also definitely hatred.
Right.
But another way to read that is to say, it was this, it was this, it was this. Yeah, it's also that. Hatred is also in there. And the way it's written, it is ambiguous,
Yeah.
I think.
Mhm.
And because of that ambiguity, there's a lot of, like, we can't say whether hatred is the dominant emotion in Reyes' repertoire, or whether it is just how he feels about the whole thing.
So, to answer your question from earlier, do I think hatred is a more powerful or whatever emotion, more fundamental? Outside of this context, I would say no. Like,
Yes.
hatred
agree.
is no more powerful. But perhaps
Yeah, I'm talking about the shard specifically.
Yeah, but perhaps for race, it is more fundamental, more powerful.
Oh,
That, like,
absolutely. Yeah, I agree.
And
For
so, like,
Reyes, it is.
yeah, and so like that, when he took up the took up the shard, it's like that's how his personality interpreted passion. It's just like, but like hatred is all like super powerful and stuff. And it's like
Okay.
that's
He
the most
was
driving force.
loathsome.
I defer to Frost here, who clearly knows what's going on, and he calls it God's own divine hatred.
Okay, yes, it says he bears the weight of God's own divine hatred.
Yes.
Yes, which
Yes.
that could, like, if he had all of God's emotions,
Yeah.
like all of his passions, love is not a weight, not necessarily a weight. It's just like, just because he says, he's not saying like he is God's own divine hatred. He says he bears the weight of God's own divine hatred.
I
So, like, you can't
and
say like,
also,
oh no,
how-
not pedantry anymore. Like,
How much
No,
of that is
all right,
Frost
fair.
knowing for sure what's going on, and Frost being like, "Oh, the other shards said this, and they know what they're talking about." So,
Yeah.
I feel like Frost knows a lot.
I feel like he knows a lot, but
Mhm.
at the same time, like, sure, Odium's listing things like lust and joy, but it's not like these deeper things like a deep love, right? Like, I feel like it's all in this flavor of hatred, you know? And it's all like, it's all these emotions that are flavored in this direction.
but
Like,
my argument would be because like that's how race viewed it. Like hatred does underlie all of these emotions.
no, I think that's what the Force is.
I
And
disagree.
Race thinks that he's more, but hatred's the thing. It's hard to sum it into a single word, but I don't think that he is all emotion. He's definitely not. And I don't think this is solely because of his interpretation. And I think Frost saying he's bearing the weight of God's own divine hatred, all the shards are bearing something of God, and they're bearing that weight, right? And what is the weight that Race is bearing? Hatred.
So, are you saying that a different vessel for this shard, even if they interpret the intent of the shard differently, would still need to deal with a hatred filter or a tint that kind of applies to the entire thing? So
absolutely,
in your mind,
100%.
Well,
yes,
that's fine. I'm clarifying.
Yes.
So in your mind, the shard is multiple emotions, but hatred is the dominant one. Or at least bigger than the others.
I don't know if I would phrase it exactly like that.
Or there are other emotions that are all fueled by hatred.
Yeah.
Or relevant.
Something more
related.
like that. Like, anyone who picks up Odium is going to need to deal with that deep pulsing hatred. And I think that's just a fact.
Okay,
And so
I would agree with that because hatred is a part of things. Like, will it necessarily be the driving force? I don't know.
That's pretty important to that. Like, I feel like the thing with this is I feel like Race is the vessel that is interpreting the shard as less of Odium. And I mean, yeah, he's a jerk. He's a total jerk and is crafty and terrible, right? But
like, this is going back. Like, yes, he's saying like, oh yeah, I'm like passion, but the intent lensing filtering like said was a passive thing.
Yeah.
So it's like, yes, like he can want to be more, but like he still interpreted like this as like hatred.
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying.
Much like any human, the way you feel and the way you are and the way you speak don't necessarily align.
Yeah.
No.
So Ray's in his head can 100% believe that the shard he's holding is passion. But the way he acts and the way his nature goes are more conductive of odium or hatred.
I actually have a metaphor for this.
Okay.
So this is going to the Wheel of Time, where like Brandon talked about writing the character of Matt, and like how Matt is an interesting character and one that was very hard to write because he thinks one thing, he says another thing, and then he does a third thing. And that like Brandon had difficulty because like he flips some of those around. Yeah, like Odium can say like I'm passion while also like still thinking like he's Odium. Though like not consciously. Does that make sense?
Yeah, okay, all right.
It's like all of these narratives can't coexist with each other.
Yeah.
That like he thinks he's Odium. Well, he thinks he's passion, but like his subconscious is interpreted this shard as Odium.
Yes. Sorry, I did say that incorrectly. Yes,
it's a little bit like a conscious mind versus subconscious mind.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Right. What he thinks he is, and what deep down he knows he is.
Yeah.
Right. Separate from like the shard itself. With that filter.
Because also people like to present themselves as nicer than they actually are.
Well, that and certainly when we have seen Odium to Dalinar, clearly that was his goal, right?
Yeah.
Very clearly. He was like, "Oh yeah, no, I'm really great. These other shards suck. I'm the one who cares."
But it's not necessarily like out of yes, there's an element of intent there. Intent as it being intentional, not as in
Yeah.
Okay.
I know it's tough. Like, it's so hard.
Yeah. And so we want to think we're better than we are. And so it's not So a part of it could just be like, yes, he's passion because like that's what he wants to be. Like, I don't know. I'm not making that point effectively.
Shards are really hard to describe, guys.
Right.
And
Yes.
what we do. Like,
It's almost like our minds aren't designed to comprehend them.
I know.
It's like the recent one from Jordan Con that Evgeni got from Brandon talking about the Stormfather visions. It just was like, he was talking about like the spiritual realm, which like it doesn't really make sense, but it's not supposed to. Because like we can't understand the spiritual realm because our brains aren't designed to understand the spiritual realm.
Yeah. I will say shards are so freaking cool that this is why I love the Cosmere, because they're just so cool to talk about. Just like holding this thing this aspect of the divine that's shaping you, and what can they do? What can they not do? Their limitations. Oh, so cool. I think the hatred's an important part, and I don't know. I think most would, a person who holds that would need to deal with that. But I see your point, Ian, that even if he wants to think he's passion, it's a passive filtering. He's a loathsome and terrible individual, so...
Like Kaladin and his slave brands. It's not... He's still... he knows he's not a slave, but in his mind, there's a part of him that's still like, no, I am still in captivity.
Right, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, he still thinks that's an intrinsic part of himself, right? Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So to be clear, I'm not saying we should be calling Odium passion by any stretch of the imagination. Like he is Odium, or like we can call him Odium. But when we're talking about the intent,
what the shard is,
I don't think it's necessarily just Odium.
But I think again, like what you were saying before, shards are really hard to sum down into a word.
Yes.
Right? And like, I think we're gonna see more of autonomy and be like, this is really weird.
Autonomy is gonna mess us up, man.
It's gonna be so weird, right?
And just to go back to that from Jordan Con, where it's like, there are multiple shards who don't necessarily agree with what the others call them.
Yeah, right. Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, which is crazy. But I mean, it is this is a very difficult question as to how much can a vessel filter their shard. How much, and that's really the question it's at. But
there is one word of Bren where like, they can shift it to a synonym.
That's true. I remember that. But
here's the thing. Well, no, maybe that's not that important. I was gonna go and talk about how if Ray's shard is vastly different from his interpretation of it, from hatred, from Odium, then Ray's wouldn't have as easy of a time doing all the hateful things that he does. So the shard must be at least along these lines.
Yeah.
But that doesn't really help the argument, because that would be the case regardless of whether the shard is primarily hatred or primarily passion. I feel like he would have an equally easy time doing all the things that he did.
Whether or not it's passion, hatred is still a part of that. So,
Sure,
Yeah.
It's just an interesting list of emotions. And just because I'm staring at that list, I'm having difficulty coming up with other emotions because I keep staring at all this Odium quote. God, it's already shaping my brain. But there's like other emotions.
You know what it made me think as I was reading for like the fifth time these emotions. Made me think of the what are they called? not the primal sins, the biblical sins.
Seven
right?
deadly
The-
sins.
The seven deadly sins.
The deadly
deadly
sins.
sins.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really, it's really true.
But I mean, like lust is in there, right? Hatred is in there
No.
in some way, I believe. Anger in
It's
some way, but
I just found them. Do you want to recall them? That's fine.
yes,
no,
I can
you
recall
can.
them.
You can.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Okay,
Okay,
it's pride, gluttony, well, blah, 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 blah. It's sloth, greed, or avarice, depending on the list. Gluttony,
Uh-huh.
wrath,
Uh-huh.
lust, envy, and pride.
You
Mhm.
said pride twice.
Well, he was
I started
when
over.
he started. Yeah.
Okay.
He did start over. I counted. It was all 7.
Thank you to Garth Nix for writing the Keys to the Kingdom series, which is how I remembered that.
Thank you, Full Metal Alchemist.
I'm not Catholic. So, yeah. Yeah, they are kind of all going in that sort of
Well,
flavor.
but then you have joy, you have exaltation.
Yeah, but like I don't think I don't know how much of joy is actually accurate. Like I can definitely see lust, right? But
Well,
I
it's-
feel like there's different kinds of joy, you know?
Mhm.
And I don't think like Odium is in charge of all joy, right? Like
The
I don't think that's the case.
cause of joy doesn't need to be like you can experience joy slaughtering people on the battlefield, and you can experience joy seeing the birth of your child. Both are joy. One of them is less good than the other.
Yeah, and I
But-
think that's why. Yeah,
But that doesn't make Odium's claim on joy invalid. Like joy on its own is inherently not bad or good.
Yeah.
No. That I agree about, but it's just curious that one of the joy that is listed when Dalinar takes in that Odium is the joy of victory. Like it's not, oh, the joy of my child's born, right?
I see.
You know,
I see
you
where
see
you're
how
getting
that's like different, right? Like,
It
yeah, Odium
ties-
thinks it's joy, but like it's like not all of that.
It's a
right?
specific type of joy, is what you're saying.
Yeah, right. Like it's not deep love, but lust. Yeah, sure. Like
It's like the
have hot makeouts right now. This is down. Like this is a different thing than like a deep love.
it's like his joy is like the kind of joy that leads to the destruction of a city after a football game.
We won! Riot! You know what? That's pretty accurate.
But
Odium confirmed
It
a
is
Liverpool
joy.
fan.
like at that point, Dalinar is looking into the
Yeah,
spiritual realm
It's still joy.
and looking at what the shard is. Like all of that is accurate.
Yeah. I mean, I think that with these shards, there's going to be some minor overlap on some things. You know?
Yeah.
Like, I
Sure.
don't think that's a problem. Where, like, would devotion have a lot to do with joy and love?
Probably,
well,
yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And that's
Mhm.
probably a reason why Odium didn't like it very much. It was like, yeah, you know, I'm claiming all these emotions, not you. You're gone. Of course, also location was very convenient as well. But, and you 2 shards in one place and stuff. But that could have been a reason there. But there's some overlap on these, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Okay, guys. Any closing thoughts on Odium? Or
I
this topic?
can't decide on like I walked into this podcast with the idea that he is more passion than
Uh-huh.
anything else. And it's raises interpretation of this that makes him that turns him into Odium. And I don't know if I've changed my mind. Like I'm not. I see value in both. I see both are valid sides in my mind. I would like the shard to be passion because I think hatred is too limited, or odium is too limited.
Mhm.
But I can't say that I'm sold in either direction.
Okay.
So you're on no team. Grace, are you on team odium or team passion?
I think I agree with you, Ian.
What?
By automatic, since Evgeni isn't doing anything, I win.
No.
Well,
No, this is not
gonna
a democracy.
I was gonna say, if I had to absolutely choose between one, I would go with passion.
Ah!
Booyah.
But I think both odium and passion are limited and flawed labels.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, yeah,
Oh,
they are
100%,
limited.
yeah.
Yes.
I just
yes.
think that passion is less flawed.
Well, I just think what the shard is these pulsing emotions, but it's all being like flavored in this specific.
And I
way,
agree with that,
like-
but I think that is because it is a race holding the shard.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that I
Yeah.
don't agree with at all. That I definitely don't agree with. I think that's what the shard is. Like, I don't think if you get a nice person to hold that shard that you're gonna get like these other emotions. That I completely
Okay.
disagree with.
So we have to turn it
Strongly
over to the viewers and the listeners.
right.
It's like, in the comments, put team odium or team passion.
We should
Okay,
do
that.
We should put a link to a poll.
Oh, no. What we can do is put 2 comments and then you like which one. Yeah.
Oh yeah, do
In
that.
the YouTube comments. Yeah.
Or we can
I'll have
do
to
a
remember to do
poll
that.
so we can share that everywhere and not just YouTube.
Yeah, but
We can do like Survey Monkey, man.
comments on YouTube and likes on comments increases viewership, man. So that's what it's about. And we want to direct.
Hey, I comment on the YouTube videos. I do my part.
You do.
Yeah.
You do. More comments increases that. No, you guys are full of crap. I don't agree with that at all. These are limited labels. Hatred's a very important aspect of this. Critically important. It will not just all be hunky-dory if you get, like, Mother Teresa to hold odium, which would be hilarious, and someone should write a fanfic about that. But
Well, I don't know.
I don't-
I've never met Mother Teresa.
Yeah.
So she.
True. All right. Well, jeez, man. Let's just.
It's been a long one.
This has been a long
Yeah.
one, but odium's long.
Yeah.
So, Grace, do you want to take this one
Sure.
away?
You know what time it is? It's time for Who's That Cosmere Character?
Great. I'm ready because, Grace, you send in a great many of these. So it's so good that you're here and Ben's not. And so, because that would be weird if both you and Ben were here and you just send them to
Yeah.
Ben and he says the things that you sent.
What really needs to happen
We
is
miss you, Ben.
I just need Ben to
Rip.
give me the password to the email.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, realistically. Great. I'm ready.
Clue number 1. This character was raised in an area they are not native to.
Okay, I have a guess.
Okay?
As do I.
Left.
No.
I was going to
Really?
go with Ayatil.
No.
Ooh.
Okay.
Uh,
Full disclosure, we did get the first clue like before the episode
we
started.
did get it in advance.
And Evgeni
Well,
and I were
to-
both adamant that we knew the answer.
Clearly.
Yeah, that's true.
Clearly, we're
But-
full of it.
But also, listeners, I definitely edit out a lot of blank space during the segment where we're just like, thinking. Like, I edit some of that out.
Thinking
I keep
noises.
some of it in for the play. Yeah. Yetil's a good guess.
Right? I was confident, man.
So was I.
Yeah, Lift is a good guess.
I don't know. I need another clue.
All right.
Give me another
Clue
clue.
number 2. This character has powers similar to Odium.
Oh,
What?
it's Sack,
Yes, it
the
is.
AVR.
Grace specifically are choosing things
Ugh.
to troll me. And I'm like, what are you talking about? But Dromanod things. God.
Eric, if you
Curse you,
if you
Grace.
specifically sent me a message asking for Who's That Cosmere Character, there's like a 50-50 shot it'll be something specifically to troll you.
That's fair.
That
And
is
this
true.
is why
That
we
true.
promoted Grace to staff.
To troll
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? I'm going to pick up hatred and deal with this.
So listeners,
I like it.
send your clues in to who's that Cosmere character at gmail.com. Or
What are the other clues?
the other clues?
Yeah.
Clue number 3, this character is not human. Clue number 4, this
Okay.
character has a close relationship to Six of the Dusk. And clue number 5,
Oh, okay.
this
okay,
character
yeah.
shows people visions of their possible deaths.
Okay. All right.
I don't
That
know
that was
if
good.
I would have guessed that even after 5 clues.
Well, I wouldn't know the name because I don't remember names on that stupid planet. But I would have gotten it's Dusk's bird.
But
Well, he
which
has
bird?
2.
He has 2.
Right, he has to.
Yes.
Whatever.
Sack and
Sa-
cooker.
sa- Sack and
The
the other
one
one.
that does that. Yeah, the other one.
Yes.
All right,
So,
guys.
listeners, send in your clues to who's that Cosmere character at gmail.com. Or if you want a somewhat amusing reply, you can send them to who's that Cosmere character at gmail.com with an E.
Because you got that
Yes,
one.
I did.
Oh,
The right one
Just
should
control
be
back.
in the description, I think.
It will be in the description. And we really should give you the password for that. Great, guys. Well, I hope you enjoyed this lengthy one. But feel free to leave a comment down below, whether you're on SoundCloud or YouTube. But if you're on YouTube, there will be a comment for Team Odium, Team Passion, like the one that you think it is. And definitely vote Team Odium because I'll torture you if you don't. Also, feel free to leave us just randomly joking about torture. That's what we're doing here.
alternatively, if you vote for Team Passion, you may be visited by many, many good passions, such
Yes.
as
Oh, okay.
lust
Okay.
and joy.
Okay. Just the joy of victory. Not. It's not gonna last.
I will
gonna
be
fade very
experiencing the
rapidly,
joy of
okay?
victory when this is all over.
Okay. Well, that might be true, but I'll be right in the end, so that's fine. Feel free to leave a review on iTunes and follow us on 17shard.com and on Twitter and Facebook for all news and updates. And we will see you guys next time.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Caw.
Oh my
I say
god.
I just wanted to steal
Caw.
Eric's caw.
Wrecked.
No, never.
Destroyed.
Never.
I have literally
Wow.
been
Let
planning
me
that
just
since
go.
yesterday.
Let me just go. No, I'm gonna go and get Odium. I'll be back. Gonna get wrecked. Caw.